And greetings. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show. Live and on demand here on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. I am Steve Deace, Aaron McIntyre, and Todd Erzin. They are here as well. 888-900-3393 is the number if you'd like to be here with us. That's 888-900-3393, or you can sit back and let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Go to steve@stevedeace.com if you want to email the program, and a ton of you are right now, and we appreciate all the interaction we're getting. Well, maybe not all of it, but, well, like Italy is said yesterday about who is really being victimized by coronavirus, about 99% of it. We appreciate about 99% of it. You can also like us on Facebook, but good luck that ever actually being made official by Facebook because they hate us. You can also follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Now, I would urge you, even if your like will not show up, because it probably won't, still visit my Facebook page because I'm posting a ton of my content there, resource materials that I am using and finding, and some of the thoughts that I'm germinating before we go on the air every day. You can get your own versions of those that you can share on our Facebook page as we continue with the asking of questions. Where does the science and expertise end, and where does the worldview and panic propaganda end? And thankfully, we have, in the last 24 hours, especially now, we are seeing a lot more people ask questions that we have been asking on this show. Saw that a host over on Fox and Friends this morning tweeted out the question that we asked on this show 2 days ago. It's going to be flu, or it's going to be allergy season everywhere in America here. It is. In the warmer climates, you guys have already gotten a start on that. Everywhere else in the country, it's going to be here in the next couple of weeks. Well, what are the symptoms for that? Runny nose, fever, respiratory discomfort, a lot of the same symptoms that are aligned with coronavirus. So how do we know we didn't stir all these people up into a panic to get them to flood our medical centers with what is just really the same mulberry bush that's been bothering them in the neighborhood or in their backyard for years? That's what we're hoping for. We're hoping to see that. And in fact, here at the bottom of the hour, I'm going to share with you a piece written by an epidemiologist at Stanford University that asks a lot of the same questions we asked on this show yesterday and the day before that, except this time somebody who's actually smart is asking them. So we will get into that here at the bottom of the hour. Also, some Theology Thursday next week, or next hour. We'll close it out next hour, too, with 3 non-political questions, because we just need a little more levity around here. So we're going to make sure we close with that coming up later in the program as well. And then if there are clips of this show that you'd like to sample and share, we're putting a ton of them up there right now. Go to youtube.com/Steve Deace. That's youtube.com/Steve Deace. But to get everything started today, here's Aaron's rundown of what's happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the fallout. The Dow Jones Industrial Average had another awful day yesterday, losing over 1,300 points amid the continued economic downfall brought about by the Wuhan coronavirus. It now sits at just about 19,900 points. Oil has now plunged to an 18-year low, sitting at just $22.43 a barrel. According to a new NPR PBS Marist poll, about 20% of households say they've lost work recently. That poll was conducted before many states shut down restaurants and bars. Echoing certain airlines, casinos, and movie theaters are now mulling a government bailout after their industries have been massively disrupted. The Senate yesterday passed a multi-billion-dollar coronavirus relief package, which includes a grant for paid sick leave to hourly employees. The U.S. Treasury is moving forward with a $250 billion plan to send every American a direct payment to help offset economic hardships. The Senate rejected Rand Paul's plans yesterday to offset the cost of that bill by reducing fraudulent child tax credit claims. Learning Chinese today, today's phrase is, get your money for nothing and your checks for free.
1分钱拿钱，免费支票.
At the White House, this happened.
At least one White House official who used the term Kung Flu, referring to the fact that this virus started in China. Is that acceptable? Is it wrong? Are you worried that having this virus be talked about as a Chinese virus, that might...
I wonder who said that. You know who said that?
I'm not sure the person's name, but would you condemn the fact...
Say the term again.
A person at the White House used the term Kung flu. My question is, do you think that's wrong? Kung flu. And do you think using the term Chinese virus, that puts Asian Americans at risk, that people might target them?
No, not at all. I think they probably would agree with it 100%.
Meanwhile, on MSNBC,
it's easy to scapegoat people, and that is what has always happened when there have been pandemics or epidemics, that foreigners are attacked. Foreigners sometimes physically attacked. If you look at what happened during the Middle Ages, there was lots and lots of scapegoating against an ethnic group or a religious group whenever there were pandemics that affected the society and frightened a lot of people. And China certainly feels that is what is happening now, with people calling it the Wuhan flu or the Wuhan virus or the China virus. This is a virus that came from the territory of China, but came from bats. This is a bat virus, not a China virus. It doesn't speak Chinese. It doesn't target Chinese people. It targets human beings who happen to touch their eyes, nose, or mouth.
Somewhere sunny, the Utes aren't obeying their elders.
If I get corona, I get corona. At the end of the day, I'm not going to let it stop me from partying. You know, we've been waiting for Miami spring break for a while. About 2 months we've had this trip planned. 2-3 months. So we're just out here having a good time. Whatever happens, happens.
Like, it's really messing up with my spring break. What is there to do here other than go to the bars or the beach, and they're closing all of it? It's really messing up. I think they're blowing it way out of proportion. I think it's doing way too much.
Doing us bad. We need a refund. This virus ain't that serious. It's serious. It's more serious things out there like hunger and poverty, and we need to address that.
Yeah, I mean, we planned this a long time ago, and it was kind of up in the air if we still go, but like we're here. I just turned 21 this year, so I'm here to party, so it's kind of disappointing, but we're just making the most of it. We met these other people in our little Airbnb spot, so we're just hanging out with them and trying to get drunk before everything closes.
In the midst of the panic, Baltimore's mayor urged his citizens to stop shooting each other in order to free up hospital beds for those dealing with the virus. About 9,400 cases of the Wuhan coronavirus have been confirmed in the U.S. 150 deaths have been attributed to the disease. And finally, the cringiest cringe that's ever cringed in the history of cringe.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
No hell below us.
Above us only sky.
What we're listening to are a plethora of celebrities singing John Lennon's Imagine to show their solidarity with those who have been quarantined.
No need for greed and hunger.
Brotherhood of man.
And that's what happened while we were away.
I have thoughts.
Aaron's montage brought to you by... I can't. I've already watched it, and just watching it again, that might have broken me.
Can I say something?
Where am I at? What are we doing today? You've got a minute. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'd like it. Those people would all very passionately want to condemn the teenagers on Miami Beach. How dare you, you selfish people. To that, I feel we need to run the Ricky Gervais thing. Don't blame me. You did it. You people.
These are your customers.
Yes, you've created that generation with everything you believe.
Yep.
Everything.
They're your disciples.
It's on you.
Right. I mean, you should be looking at them and saying, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Right? Yeah. They're your disciples.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, and for Twitter Jack, who he goes if it's like shamans and Maharishis and stuff. All right, for Twitter Jack and Hollywood to come together to try to inspire us with an atheist lullaby. If that is not the most on-brand thing in the history of social media, I don't know what is. I mean, you cannot get more on-brand than that. Not to mention the lack of self-awareness. I mean, imagine you have self-awareness. It's easy if you try, right? A bunch of you sitting out there. Then again, we're talking about celebrity, so you may say that I'm a dreamer. I'm hoping I'm not the only one. But you've got a bunch of celebrities out there with material wealth, far more, and handlers and staff And by the way, props to their business managers who held the phone up for them so they could do that, right? That was cool. But I mean, with all their handlers and staff and all their materialism, singing a song about having no possessions. I mean, I just...
Well, that's the thing with them. They sitting there at home, they are feeling too much like the rest of us. I truly believe that. This is humbling in a way that they are very, very uncomfortable. So they need to reestablish how they're the special people. And that's how they're doing this. They couldn't just shut up and be like the rest of us. They'll lecture the rest of us about how we're supposed to shut up and go away, like the people in Miami. But no, this is God is like just like all in. Here you go, people. You get to see it all now.
Along those lines, in a moment, I have a scorching hot take about the Florida teenagers. All right. And I'm going to throw it out there in a minute. All right. But Freedom Project Academy brought to you Aaron's rundown today. Our good friend, that's Dr. Duke Pesta. He is a tenured professor of English at the University of Wisconsin. He's the director of Freedom Project Academy, which is leading the fight against the left's takeover of public education. And when we think of the decline in public schools, you think of just places like California and New York, not a Catholic elementary school who will share LGBT books, or a Kentucky bill that requires sex ed in kindergarten, or an LGBT school proposed in the heart of the Bible Belt down in Alabama. If you're sick of leftists trying to indoctrinate your kids, please consider Freedom Project Academy. A lot of you are probably wondering about some ancillary supplemental education options right now. Well, Freedom Project Academy is an accredited classical online school built on Judeo-Christian values for students K through 12. This is a complete interactive educational experience where students attend live classes with other students across the country from the comfort and safety of your own home. Our son Noah did this for several years. He's not doing it now because he wants to get involved in extracurricular activities. So we sent him to Des Moines Christian this year, but he enjoyed it for the last few years. If you want to learn more about it, because they teach students how to think, not what to think, go to freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com, and request your information packet today at freedomforschool.com. So a lot has been made over the amount of outrage, the amount of pearl clutching I saw over the spring breakers down in Florida yesterday on social media was plentiful. But I don't know that you intended this, Aaron. Maybe you did. But the juxtaposition, and given you're a millennial, I suspect you might have done this on purpose. The juxtaposition of the millennials down there like, dude, we're getting our drink on, man. This thing's overblown. And we got other, there's, isn't poverty a bigger problem than 150 deaths that were 88 of them are in 2 states, California and Washington State, right? That's basically what he's saying, right? He doesn't know the numbers, but the kids don't know the numbers, or the young adults don't. But that's essentially what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
And the amount of outrage that was directed at them. But did you notice the story right after that? Your OK Boomer mayor of Baltimore. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Yeah. Right? Didn't you? Okay. I see what you did there. Yeah. I caught you. I'm picking up what you're laying down. Mm-hmm. The OK Boomer of Baltimore has to tell his people, stop shooting each other so that we don't run out of hospital beds. Where's all the pearl clutching and outrage about that?
Indeed.
Who do you think we ought to have a higher level of standard for? America's spring breakers or the adults of one of America's largest cities? What is more offensive to you? We all love our binary choices these days, so let me provide you one. What should be in a healthy culture? What should be more offensive? That the mayor of one of America's largest cities has to beg his constituents to stop murdering each other in the streets so they can take care of sick people who by and large have actually not even shown up yet, but That's another story. All right. So they could potentially take care of sick people who haven't shown up yet, but they may. We don't know. Or people that are at a largely irresponsible stage in life want to continue to act irresponsibly. What do you think should be more offensive, Todd?
The former.
The former. Yet that we didn't have much outrage for that story yesterday. We didn't. Why? And it goes to what you just said about these young adults and they're essentially Hollywood's disciples. You know who else has discipled them? We did. Those are our kids. Those are our kids and grandkids. And this is learned behavior, right? I mean, they were taught there really is no ultimate responsibility. There really is no real purpose to their lives. We let them get indoctrinated with that viewpoint.
Love is love. Don't judge, man.
Yeah, don't judge. Love wins. Love is love.
YOLO.
Right? Yeah. You only live once. I mean, we're all panicked right now. We've reduced humanity to nothing more than a survival rate in our media in the last week. That's all we are. We're not here to do anything more meaningful. We're just a survival rate. So if you're the 29-year-old cop that throws himself in front of an innocent woman who is getting beaten to death by gangbangers and you get beaten to death instead, you're just an idiot. You're a moron. Why'd you sacrifice yourself for? You had your whole life to live, right? We're just a survival rate. That's all that we are. There's nothing else happening here other than exist for as long as you possibly can. Nothing else. Italy is the worst place on earth for this virus right now. Its Institute of Health said yesterday, 99% of its deaths have come from elderly and those with pre-existing conditions. Well, then tell me, based off of the worldview that we subsidized and let them be indoctrinated with their entire lives and go into student loan debt for at this moment, tell me who is more consistent here? Who morally has taken their position to its most logical conclusion? The spring break millennials or the OK boomer in Baltimore begging for his own damn adults to have a ceasefire in the streets of a city of America? Which one do you think it is? Because I know which one. Maybe you can tell from the tone of my voice. That my poker face was bad on this one. All right. You know what? We'll call it a lean. I'm leaning one way here on this one. What are your thoughts, Todd?
Oh, by that standard, and it's the correct standard, those teenagers are Gandhi.
Yes, absolutely. They're sages of the age.
Yes.
They're only carrying out what we allowed them to be taught and to be witnessed, right?
Yeah.
That this is the most logical. This is actually.
It's their body, their choice.
That's exactly right. By what standard would we tell them they're wrong? By what standard? Certainly not the one that we've educated them with the last 21 years.
There's that humanity has inherent dignity and value and we must protect it. Really? People, secular progressives are going to start laying down that card?
Exactly. And it goes to what you said yesterday, Aaron, that when we talked about, and I think you can see now in the last 24 hours, man, we mentioned this again. And now you've got Elon Musk coming out and calling BS on this earlier today. There's going to be a lot more of this. And some of it will be legitimate research like what we've tried to do. Some of it will be. But a lot of it actually is what you mentioned, Aaron. It's going to be the spirit of the age is going to turn on itself. It's going to feast on itself. It's going to say, wait a minute, man, I'm an LSU football fan, and I just turned on my TV, and Ed Orgeron's on there telling me that if we don't do this now, we might not have football this year. Hell no. That's what you were talking about yesterday, that ultimately the decadence will turn on itself. People will say, I mean, what are we doing here? What is the point of this then? And I think we are going to, and I've been on his show before. He used to be here on the Blaze. Buck Sexton's a good guy. He tweeted out a timetable yesterday that, and I think he's a former intelligence officer or something, if I remember right. He tweeted out yesterday a timetable of how long he thought people, and I said, oh, Buck, no, they won't. Buck, this thing's going to be Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Break here much sooner than that. And I think, to their credit, the White House realizes this, which is why on Monday, even though the comment Trump made about July and August got all the headlines, did you see the actual name of the report that they put out there? What the header was on the report to justify these just 15 days is what it says right in the header. They know this. They know. They are aware that. If we're not burning bodies like Northern Italy, America is, and let's pray we're not, America's not putting up with the Imperial College climate alarmist scale your life back plan. And then every 2 to 3 months we get to, come together and enjoy some semblance of Americana before we're sequestered with a bunch of teenagers who hate us at this stage of their life. And frankly, most of us don't care that much for them. That's never happening. It's never happening. It's never ever happening, ever.
But what will happen, and it'll be fascinating, those who are like, let's get this engine revved up again.
Yep.
But those who will still self-quarantine because of how paralyzed by fear, and they're reading those columns you're talking about, and those alone,
right? That
you want to talk how tribalism will continue to dig in.
I don't trust China's numbers at all, and I don't think you should. I mean, they're reporting today they don't have any new case. I don't trust that at all. But you know who I do trust? Apple. I trust them. They're opening all their stores up in China. That was announced yesterday. South Korea is going back to pro sports at the end of the month. Now it's going to be, like I said yesterday, it's going to be piecemeal. Originally, they're going to bring the athletes together. Everybody's going to be tested, make sure they're negative, and there won't be fans in the stands. They're going to do it little by little, but they're going to begin returning to normalcy in South Korea. When Americans start seeing that, when they start seeing Chinese folks walking out of Apple with the latest iPad, and they're probably wearing a surgical mask, but when they watch them walking out of the Shanghai or Hong Kong Apple store with the newest iPad Air, and they're down in the basement watching Frozen 2 for the 75th damn time, you know what Americans are going to say? Hell to the no. And I think this White House understands that, which is why the name of the plan was the 15-day plan. And because that's about and I think that is pushing the American attention span based on what I've seen the last few years. I mean, doesn't the Mueller probe feel like it was like in the Encyclopedia Britannica, Todd, and we read about it in 7th grade?
Yeah.
Okay. Or Aaron got it on some Internet Explorer, or we read it on Wikipedia when he was a kid. Okay. That was 4 or 5 months ago. Right. When Mueller testified or whatever it was. No, there's no way people are going to do this unless there's real tragedy. Now, if there's real tragedy, then all bets are off. And I think you'll see people rise to the occasion given our history. But anything short of that, anything short of that, nope. I don't think they're going to do it. Am I wrong? What do you think?
Well, no, they're not doing it now in many respects. Again, and you're going to lay that out more specifically here coming up, but it doesn't make sense. And like I said, if you don't see Florida a heaping rubble of disease in 2 weeks, or if you see Idris Elba and Tom Hanks just like kick the tires and light the fires, I'm good in 2 weeks, because people are seeing with social media.
Well, that was yesterday. Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson were let out of the hospital yesterday, right?
They're not, but you guys are going to go do what you got to do, and they're going to do it. They are. And we're supposed to sit tight and play Monopoly? No.
Here's the other thing you got to watch for too, okay? And this is, don't just ask questions of the medical community or the media. Ask questions of people in the finance community too. So yesterday, a little birdie of mine sent me a video clip about a guy named Bill Ackman is his name. And he apparently has the ear of Steve Mnuchin. And hey, what do you know about this guy? Can you check him out, etc. So we did a little research on him, because the thing is, the thing you always want to find out first is because what he's basically he's got the ear, I'm told, of Steve Mnuchin, who right now has the ear of Donald Trump. And he was on CNBC yesterday, full Denethor. Run for your lives! We can't defeat the orcs! Shut it all down! I mean, he did everything but just pour himself with oil, anoint himself with oil and just jump on top of the funeral pyre. That was literally this clip I was sent. Every hotel, everything, shut it all down! Run for your lives! That was the clip. So we did a little research on him, right? You took a look at him for me. And because the first thing I wanted to do is look at the worldview. Is this guy driven by a worldview panic? Because is he a Tom Steyer? We introduced our audience to Jeremy Grantham yesterday, right? Is he a climate alarmist? So this isn't conspiracy, it's confirmation bias. It's why the Millerites went out and sold all their goods because they thought for sure the rapture was going to take place today. It's why people keep buying Hal Lindsey books, because where he keeps changing the date that Jesus will return. It fuels our own confirmation bias of our projection of what we want to be true. All right. And so that's what I mean. I'm not talking about if this was a global conspiracy, we wouldn't be allowed to be on the air saying the stuff we're saying right now. That had taken us off. You'd be watching a test pattern right about now. All right. That's how conspiracies work. No, this is just when the spirit of the age comes together in one room and they start emoting off of each other and feeding off of each other. You get a circular self-pleasuring squad. That's what you get. It called confirmation bias. And so what I wanted to know is, is this guy got a mass worldview where he's invested in this? And you found he's your typical liberal secular guy that just donates to, your Planned Parenthoods and stuff, but he's not like an apostle of the new age. He's your typical Democrat, billionaire investment banker, donor guy, right? He's a dime a dozen, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you what his other motivation is. Crash all the markets right now. So I buy everything on the pennies on the dollar, and I'm Warren Buffett with a Superman cape in about 6 months when everything is back to normal and the economy's humming again and everything else. You be careful with that. You're going to start seeing these people on the business channels and everything else. Mark my words. They are going to be, my guess is he wants the hotels closed because there's a particular hotel chain he wouldn't mind buying himself and acquiring. What was the story yesterday? Disney stock has plummeted so much. See, did you see these two stories juxtaposed yesterday too? The story of Apple opening up all of its stores in China, and then the story next to it, well, Disney stock has plummeted so much, Apple could buy Disney.
Yeah.
All right. These people are they're all part of the same fraternity of worldview. All of them. They're feeding each other content all of the time. So don't be surprised when you start seeing corporate magnates like this Bill Ackman guy just go out there, run for full Denethor, run for your lives, surrender Minas Tirith. We're done. Or we're overrun by the orcs. We can't win. And while he's sitting back there just waiting for stuff to tank, so he can buy it pennies on the dollar, and then you'll be bowing the knee to the Bill Ackmans of the world here in 6 months from now when we look at each other and say, remember that coronavirus thing? Doesn't that seem like that was 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Watch for that to happen during this time as well.
Thankfully, right now, there's enough of the Scott Walker syndrome going on. We saw him as a presidential candidate. We're like, where are your stones that you showed versus the public sector unions? But you laughed at the time because I said, we just got the right nerd for that issue. He'd like a clean fiscal spreadsheet. He just could not even really. Right. And so he had to do that.
They put baby in a corner and he had to come out fighting.
He had to. Yes. But right now we have an increasing number of people. They're not really moral crusaders, but the dots don't add up fiscally with everything, the way we're overreacting, and they just can't stand it. And maybe this guy you're about to talk about next half hour is one of those guys, even though he's a scientist, but just like, listen, I can't go that level of crazy. My wiring will not allow me to do that. I think we're going to see more and more of those people because again, if they're not moral crusaders, they're not Winston Churchills. They're just like, I've got to be a grown up. I can't sleep at night if I cannot be a grown up with this one thing.
Yes, because panics always bring out craven opportunists as well. All right. I just deleted 3 emails sent to me. Get your surgical mask and coronavirus supplement cure. Okay. You think I signed up on any of these lists? Hell to the no. All right. So be aware of that level of skullduggery here in these days that we currently are immersed in. And we've been teasing it. We're going to get to it when we come back here. A Stanford epidemiologist sounding a lot like this show was a couple of days ago when everybody thought I was nuts. Well, I may not be smart, but I ain't nuts. We'll get to this story here in a moment. All right, let's get right into this because I think this is the most important thing I have read or seen since this pandemic came to our shores. And it was published yesterday, and it's going to sound an awful lot like what we've been saying on this show for the past couple of days, or really pretty much all this week. It's written by an epidemiologist over at Stanford. So number one, this is his area of expertise. It's what he does full time, all day long. Number two, this is one of the elite institutions, not just in America, but in the world. Here's the headline of his column. I've tweeted this column out. You can find it at Steve Deace Show if you go through my thread. It's been posted on my Facebook page. If you go to look for Steve Deace on Facebook, you should get this, read this, share it with everybody you know. Here's the headline. A fiasco in the making. As the coronavirus pandemic takes hold, we are making decisions without reliable data. Let me repeat that last line. We are making decisions without reliable data. The current coronavirus disease, COVID-19, has been called a once-in-a-century pandemic, but it also may be a once-in-a-century evidence fiasco, writes the epidemiologist from Stanford. John P. Ioannidis is his name. John P. Ioannidis is his name. At a time when everyone needs better information, from disease modelers and governments to people quarantined or just social distancing, we lack reliable evidence on how many people have been infected with SARS-CoV-2 or who continue to even become infected. Better information is needed to guide decisions and actions of monumental significance and to monitor their impact. Draconian countermeasures have been adopted in many countries. If the pandemic dissipates either on its own or because of these measures, short-term extreme social distancing and lockdowns may be bearable. How long, though, should measures like these be continued if the pandemic churns across the globe unabated? How can policymakers tell if they are doing more good than harm? Vaccines or affordable treatments take many months or even years to develop and test properly. Given such timelines, the consequences of long-term lockdowns are entirely unknown. The data collected so far on how many people are infected and how the epidemic is evolving is utterly unreliable. Given the limited testing to date, some deaths and probably the vast majority of infections due to COVID-19 are being missed. We don't know if we are failing to capture infections by a factor of 3 or 300. Bit of a difference between that, don't you think?
Just a
massive difference. See, this is why. Let me pause here.
I think he hates old people, Steve.
Well, that's already been established. Thank you, Todd. I don't know if he wants me to out him online, but Gaston, one of the Mikey Mucks here at the Blaze, texted me last night, you should add hater of old people to your Twitter bio.
I like that.
But here's why, what he's saying is why I am measuring the stats by the total population. Because we don't know how many people have it. I would be willing to bet right now, as somebody who puts his own money into sports handicapping endeavors, if you said, Steve, I'm going to put the over-under on a quarter of a million Americans. If we tested 336,000 people, 250,000 Americans would have COVID-19, test positive for coronavirus. Are you taking the over or the under? I'm going to take the remainder of what I'm going to make the rest of this year and put it all on the over. All of it. My daughter's future wedding funds, the equity in my home. I'm going to take my life insurance. I'm going to cash that out. If you told me it was 500,000, I'd still bet it all on the over. I would. And that's why looking at the mortality rates, the critical care rates, and when I post my data, I'm actually being favorable to the virus. I am putting everybody that is listed as critical or serious as ICU in my data. They're not, but I'm just doing that to estimate high because human life matters. So I'm going to do that. Okay. But that's why I'm doing it by the comparison of the total population, because of what he just said. With limited testing, we don't know how many people have this. And it's going to be a lot more than you think, or we even know right now. We've probably been carrying it for months, would be my guess. Months. The Chinese probably didn't let you know about this till they had a handle on it, which means, as Daniel Horowitz said yesterday, back in January, we brought back, after Christmas break, what did we bring back? All of the Chinese nationalists that go to our universities all flew back home, or flew back here from home, and probably brought from home the virus, because they've probably been fighting it in China for 6 months, would be my guess. At least 3 to 6 months, at least 3. Scores of Americans are walking around with this. And as we sit here this morning, right now, 155 people are dead. Now that number's probably higher too, because we probably had people die of serious RSVs in January and February, but we didn't know what a coronavirus was.
Yes.
So we just figured, well, it's just another sad story of America's flu season is probably what we thought at the time. Or they're 90 years old, or you're like your dad who died of pneumonia at 75 or 73,
I
right?
said it off air. My dad technically died of pneumonia, but that's what this causes. My dad could have had coronavirus. I have no idea.
The death rate's probably higher. We just didn't know what it was in January and February. That's why the numbers should only be looked at, because the kill rate of a disease, when it comes to public policy, because that's what we're talking about now. This is not a medical show. It's a public policy show. When we're talking about public policy, the kill rate of a disease only comes into play when it's communicable. It's why we don't sit here and do shows on, well, how should we live in light of how high of a rate pancreatic cancer kills people? Because I don't transmit that to you. If you touch if they diagnose me with pancreatic cancer, I'm not disinfecting my doorknobs because when the company comes over, because I might hand it off to you. This though is purely communicable. So it isn't relevant about how many people get it to how many it is from a health standpoint. It is from the standpoint of those families who are losing loved ones. But we're a public policy show here. From a public policy standpoint, the only conversation that really matters is what is the infected death rate as it relates to the total population? Because we're transferring this to each other. And that's what he's pointing out. We don't know. We don't know. And we're making all these draconian measures and we don't know. Italy is reporting a grand total of 2,300 people have gone into serious or critical care. Now, I don't live in Italy. I can't imagine how a 21st century Western nation is brought to its knees because it has 2,100 additional people in its hospital beds. I can't even imagine that. But then again, Italy has had 75 governments in the last 1,000 years too. So I don't know, but I don't live there. But that's the total number they're reporting. 2,300 people have gone into serious or critical care as we speak right now. I can't imagine that crippling a modern Western nation, but apparently it has. Their infrastructure must suck. 3 months after the outbreak emerged, back to the piece here from Stanford, most countries, including the U.S., lack the ability to test a large number of people, and no countries have reliable data on the prevalence of the virus in a representative random sample of the general population. He's just further reinforcing what I've been telling you and why I've been using the numbers for the Gen Pop the way that I have. This evidence fiasco creates tremendous uncertainty about the risk of dying from COVID-19. Reported case fatality rates, like the official 3.4% rate from the World Health Organization, cause horror, but they're meaningless. Patients who have been tested for COVID-19 are disproportionately those with severe symptoms and bad outcomes. As most health systems have limited testing capacity, selection bias may even worsen in the near future, meaning we're only testing the people whose symptoms are prevalent.
Which artificially inflates the death rate of those who have it.
Yes. If I have a control group, if I'm testing again for pancreatic cancer, and everybody in my control group has it, and I'm trying to find out how many people in America have pancreatic cancer, and everybody in my control group that I test positive, I'm going to have a pretty skewed view of how bad the problem of pancreatic cancer is in the United States, right?
Yes.
Or in any nation for that matter. That is essentially what we are doing here. We're doing symptomatic testing because the test kits are so few and far between. So we don't have a clue of really how many people have it, and then how many people have it and can live with it, their bodies can fight it off, process it, etc. We don't have a clue. We don't. Projecting the Diamond Princess, that's the cruise ship that everybody talked about, okay? He says the case fatality rate there was 1%, but this was a largely elderly population in which the death rate from COVID-19 is much higher. Projecting that mortality rate onto the age structure of the U.S. population, the death rate among people infected with COVID-19 would be 0.125%. But since this estimate is based on extremely thin data, there were just 7 deaths among the 700 infected passengers on that ship. The real death rate could stretch from 5 times lower, 0.025%, to 5 times higher, 0.625%. It is also possible that some of the passengers who were infected may end up dying later. meaning that it weakened their immunity systems and then they got something later and then died. So did they die of the flu later? Did they die of a bad cold, a respiratory ailment later? Or was this because of, we don't know. We don't know. So even using the Diamond Princess mortality rate, and here's why he used this, because this is the extreme case that's been in the news. He's estimating high as well. Even if you extrapolate the Diamond Princess as the control group for the United States of America, and you even say with a disproportionate elderly population than America is, even if we go with this and you extrapolate that to 336 million people, the maximum death rate you'd come up with is 0.625%. You know, it's amazing when you just do the math and you're not projecting your climate alarmist worldview upon the math like Imperial College got caught doing by us yesterday on this show. This guy's just running the numbers. Ask yourself, do you shut down a people responsible for feeding, clothing, securing, and defending much of the civilized world for a death rate of 0.625%? Do you? That's the question to ask. Because just like I said about Italy, brought to its knees because it needs 2,300 more ICU beds. We can defend the borders of Afghanistan for 17 damn years. But we can't keep a country going with a death rate of 0.625%. We can't do that.
Currently, the answer is clearly no.
We didn't make America great again. Breaking news. We have a breaking news sounder. We didn't make America great again after all, guys. We didn't do it. Damn. Rats, curses, foiled again. It is also possible that some of the passengers who were infected might die later and that tourists who may have different frequencies of chronic diseases, meaning are you obese? Do you smoke? Do you do things behaviorally that make your health worse? Or will you have the virus and then go do those things later in life, which then suddenly trigger your susceptibility to it? Which makes them a risk factor of far worse outcomes than the general population will see. Adding these extra sources of uncertainty, reasonable estimates for the case fatality ratio in the general U.S. population vary anywhere from 0.05 to 1%. That is a chasm, folks. A chasm. That is a chasm.
To put it another, from 0.05 to 1%. Is that what you said?
Yes.
That's either it's twice. That's either means it's half as deadly as the seasonal flu or 10 times as deadly as it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, given the societal cost here, that's a gamble, man. That's launching a war without any real intel. You're just kind of guessing. Yeah. Well, I think this is where the enemy is because I read it on Twitter.
Throwing darts in the dark.
Well, Steve, they got the World Health. Well, the World Health. You mean the same World Health Organization who said back in January that you could not transmit this person to person and called it the Wuhan virus? By the way, would it be that World Health Organization? Would it be that one? Well, I mean, they have this Imperial College simulation. You mean from the same people who think you're all dead? We're in a 200-year energy bubble. Those are their words. 200-year from their benefactor. 200-year energy bubble because of the fossil fuels that essentially gave us the Industrial Revolution. Gave us the manufacturing base to an ability to win 2 world wars, save Western civilization in the last century. You mean the people that ran the simulation who are opposed to that and think Al Gore is Jesus? You mean that? Those people? I'm going to need more. I'm going to need more. And here's a guy from Stanford University who goes on and on and on. Here's his final conclusion. I would urge you, go to my Facebook page, go to my Twitter account, get this column. I'll tweet it out again. So it's at the top of my page right now. Get this, read it, share it with everybody you know. Could have done a whole show on this. Here's his final conclusion. If we decide to jump off the cliff, maybe we need some data to inform us about the rationale of such an action and the chances of actually landing somewhere safe. We just essentially launched a Middle East war on a virus. Something must be done, but we don't know when we win. Is that right? Is that what we essentially did?
Mm-hmm.
Trump basically went Gulf of Tonkin resolution yesterday. Pray he doesn't turn this into his personal Vietnam. Where are we doing? Where are we going? And the Imperial College plan was essentially our Vietnam battle plan. Take a rice paddy, then give it back. Take it back again, give it back. That was the Imperial College plan. Shut down as long as it takes to get a vaccine and then forcibly vaccinate everybody. Come together for 2 to 3 months, then don't. You know why they want us to do that? Because we got rid of what's called herd immunity, which has been used to fight plagues for thousands of years. This guy goes into this in this piece as well. That's what since they sequestered all the healthy people. Well, what happens when we get back together? Do we just start spreading it all over again? Instead of sequestering the sick people or the people most susceptible, which is what societies have been doing without modern innovation to fight leprosy and plagues for thousands of years, we sequestered the healthy people. So what happens when we bring them all back together again? We just start breathing the corona air all over again, right? So we just do this indefinitely for the same amount of time it takes us to usher in the proto version of the Green New Deal. I'm sure it's all a coincidence. I'm sure. No, it's worldview confirmation bias. And props to John Ioannidis, professor of medicine and epidemiology and population health at Stanford University, for calling BS on this with actual data and science. Make sure you get this piece and share it. Back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, podcast. I'm Steve Deace, Todd Erzin, and Aaron McIntyre. They're here with me as well. If you do listen to us today via the podcast, by the way, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you choose to podcast from, because the more of those we get, the more it helps the show to grow, and then the more likely we get to continue to do this here show and ask the kinds of questions that need to be asked. Thank you to the thousands of you that have already left us a 5-star review. For the rest of you, what are you waiting for? I mean, it's not like you got anything else going on right now. You got plenty of time. Right? Everybody's kind of without excuse. Now, I guess now we find out how many people really like the show, right? You're kind of out of excuses. Nobody's too busy to leave us a 5-star review. So if you haven't left us one yet, then I guess we kind of know where we stand with you, right? Okay. And as in any relationship, if you have to ask, you probably don't want to know, right? So please, I'm asking, which means I may not want to know. Coming up here at the bottom of the hour, we're going to take, I hope, Aaron, so help me. If you give me first question, what's your Mount Rushmore of coronavirus takes? I'm pulling over the car and spanking you. All right. The next segment, three non-political questions, needs to be a green zone, a coronavirus-free zone, please.
Yeah, I think. Well, it's like 99.5% coronavirus-free, but in a creative way.
Damn millennials. Let's get to Theology Thursday, which I don't know. I'm hoping it might be a coronavirus-free zone. We will soon find out. It's brought to you, though, by our friends over at Brickhouse Nutrition. With all the talk about coronavirus, people have stopped talking about the flu, which has killed 16,000 and hospitalized over 250,000 in the United States. And the season isn't even over yet. In fact, it's going to be 62 today and like 34 tomorrow here in Iowa or something.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
with flood warnings.
Yeah, nice. One of the best ways to avoid getting sick is with a healthier immune system, which is why you should fortify your body with Brickhouse Nutrition, particularly the product known as Field of Greens. It's the only way we can get Noah to eat, or in this case, drink his vegetables. One scoop has a full serving of real USDA certified organic fruits and vegetables, which will boost energy and support a healthy immune system. And doctors agree a diet of fruit and vegetables can reduce the risk of everything from heart disease, you name it. pretty much anything, the healthier what you put in your body is, the healthier your body tends to be. All right. So Field of Greens also puts in those prebiotics, probiotics, the vitamins, fiber, all those other nutrients that are stripped out of our foods these days for mass consumption. Field of Greens will put it back in there as well. And right now you can save 15% off of your first order with the offer code Steve at brickhousesteve.com. That's brickhousesteve.com. Use the offer code Steve and you'll get 15% off of your first order. If you decide to sign up, subscribe to Brickhouse Nutrition, you'll even save an extra 10% every month if you go that route as well. All right. So brickhousesteve.com, brickhousesteve.com. Let's get to Theology Thursday, and we're going to continue with the series that we started a couple of months ago. And just to set this up again, Amy and I are taking well, we're not now because it's on hold, but we have been taking an entry seminary level, like a first year seminary level, big picture view course of the New Testament. And part of that class is each week I have to pick a question and write an essay answer to it. And we've been sharing each week for Theology Thursday these last couple of months. I think we're in week 10 now, and this is a 16-week course. So we've been sharing each week the essay answer and question that I choose to do and doing a Theology Thursday on it. And this week, the answer comes from the book of Ephesians in the New Testament, where Paul is writing to the church there in a place called Ephesus. And we've talked before when we talked about Corinthians, and we spent the whole you were gone that day, caring for your pops. But we spent the whole time setting up Corinth as the talking point itself to show that the issues that Paul was addressing there are not really any different. I mean, the only difference between them and us is the innovative way we can sin compared to what they were doing back in Corinth. But I think to point out why Paul probably chose to lay out what he's going to say here in Ephesians 6 to this audience is when Paul arrived in Ephesus, you've heard me talk about this before, I think we even addressed it when we talked about Acts. When Paul arrived in Ephesus, he had a unique challenge to minister to this culture because the paganism of Ephesus was fused with the socioeconomic order. I mean, other than the agrarian and basic needs of the culture, the number one industry sector in Ephesus was centered around the worship of Artemis or Diana, a pagan. Whether you're Greek or Roman, it's a pagan entity. And so the markets revolved around this. A lot of people's livelihoods revolved around this. So if you convert people to a different religion, if they leave that paganism behind and go with Team Jesus instead, there's not just a threat on a spiritual or philosophical level, but people are going to see this could take food off their tables, and a lot of people. And so Paul is not just a threat to the spirit of the age. He's a threat to the most basic primal instinct people have, their own livelihoods. And I'm just guessing here, but I'm thinking that this is why he chooses this epistle to this audience to be what he's about to lay out. Because they are facing if you're a Christian in Ephesus in the first century, you are facing a full on-board assault on your belief system as a religious minority. Because you're not just a threat to Nero and Nero's acolytes amongst the elite in Rome, but everyday people that might be otherwise sympathetic to you. Because, they don't particularly like tyrannical rulers themselves. But everyday people who, maybe in other parts of the Roman Empire, when there's a crackdown on you as a religious minority, a minority religious sect, might be willing to let you hide out, in their basement for a while. Not so much here. Because, if you get your way in Ephesus as a Christian, I'm out of a job, man. And as my old college roommate Mike Bartram used to put it, romance without finance, a damn nuisance. You know what I'm saying? You know, the number one cause of divorce in America is financial hardship. So there was no part of the community of Ephesus. This is two things at once. It is both this is a very high-minded theological argument, but a very commoner impact. There's nowhere you can go in Ephesus if the Christians win out that you will not be impacted. Nowhere. Because this whole socioeconomic order is going to change. And we have that in our culture right now. Where we talked about this individual yesterday. Jeremy Grantham at Imperial College is an example of this. The fusion of his paganism with his finance to form essentially one religious hermeneutic. And so he donates 98% of his multi-billions to the ending of fossil fuels, basically. The ending of modern American and Western civilization. And that creates think tanks, academic centers, industries, green energy sectors. Now, what does it take? Just those four things I just mentioned. Do they run themselves? No, you've got to hire people, right?
Yeah.
So he has created, Jeremy Grantham, what I told you about yesterday, make sure you get yesterday's show. Jeremy Grantham has created an economy of scale on the basis of his pagan belief. If you beat Jeremy Grantham in the arena of ideas, thousands of people are losing their jobs. Can't feed their families. Gonna have to find other work. Jeremy Grantham is not just someone with a different political ideology than you, or Tom Steyer, or Warren Buffett, or everybody's favorite boogeyman, George Soros, and he's earned that status. They want to create a different socioeconomic order. But to do that, they have to defeat your belief system. That's what Paul was trying to do. That's what Paul had to do. For Christianity to gain a foothold in Ephesus, it was going to mean the entire socioeconomic order had to be uprooted. Because any percentage of people that stopped taking part in the marketing and the commerce surrounding the worship of Artemis and Diana and joined the Christian church instead was taking money out of somebody else's pocket. And so it is to this audience that Paul lays out in chapter 6 what it means to be a Christian soldier. And so this is the question that I answered this week. In Ephesians 6, the Apostle Paul describes a Christian soldier, identify the armor of God as provided for us. What is the specific function of each piece? How can a believer put on each piece every day? Which piece of armor do you have the least difficulty putting on and why? And which piece of armor do you have the most difficulty putting on and why? So I think the first answer, or I want to first answer the question, how can a believer put on each piece of armor every day? Because I believe that sets the stage and provides for the rest of the answers we're about to give. I think the answer to this question lies in what Paul says prior to laying out the armor of God in Ephesians 6. He says we're to stand against the schemes of the devil. This morning I tweeted out that you should pray for President Trump more than you ever have before. Pray that he gets supernatural levels of wisdom and courage of conviction. Because what this country is going through right now came from, he needs those things from above. He needs that wisdom and courage of conviction from above, because what's happening to this country came from down below, if you catch my drift. And here Paul says we are to stand against the schemes of the devil, that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Real spiritual warfare. He wants the people of Ephesus, I think, to see that when their neighbor comes at them and says, we got to shut you Christians down, I'm going to lose my job if you get your way, that individual isn't your real enemy. But the spirit of the age that he or she has bought into, that is propelling them to act out that way, that is the enemy. You may defeat that person politically or socioeconomically. Doesn't mean that you got rid of the spirit of the age behind him or her. They'll just find another vessel. That you've actually got to fight the enemy that you have, not the enemy you think you have. Sort of like the mistake we've made in our foreign policy. Projecting what we think Islam is, as opposed to what it actually is. And Paul is saying something similar here. Fight the enemy you really have. The enemy you really have aren't the people of Ephesus. They've bought into a scam, sure, but you did too. You were buying into scams too until you joined. We got you to reverse the jersey and sign up with Team Truth. You were buying into a scam too. The villain is the scam, not the victim of the scam. The villain is the scam. The scam is the villain. Go after the scam. And here's where the scam comes from. Pit of hell. That's where the scam comes from. The pit of hell. And spiritual enemies require spiritual warfare. And these are the tools it takes to live counterculturally. Now, some of you may respond, well, that's fine. I don't believe in the devil. Okay? And you may declare it confidently. I confidently declare I don't believe in gravity. The truth of something's existence is not based upon my belief in it. It exists or it doesn't. And then my job is to then believe based on whether it exists or not. My belief I'm not God. I don't cause things to come into existence. If you think you have a belief system where your belief in something makes something happen, congratulations. Okay? Then put down the Bible. You really believe in The Secret, and Eckhart Tolle and Oprah Winfrey are more your jam. The existence of the devil, a superior, not supreme, but a superior being, superior to us, not superior to God, but he's superior to us. A superior being of evil requires some next level weaponry to confront and defeat. If I didn't believe this, I wouldn't have spent a year of my life writing, publishing, and promoting a book called A Nefarious Plot, which is heavily along the lines of what we're talking about here. But from the other side of the street. We do recon on what the other side of the street's spiritual warfare schemes are. What they're thinking down below about us up here above. So it starts off with the belt of truth. Now, what is a belt? A belt is what keeps what you're wearing firmly attached. It kind of holds everything up. Without it, you risk your armor falling apart on you, or your armor losing its consistency, because it firms everything up as well. I'm someone that's wired for things to be made plain. I embrace objective absolutes. I've always been this way, even before I was made this way. Even before I was converted, I'd be the guy to go to the coach and just say flat out, why don't I play more? And if I'm not good enough, tell me, and then tell me what I have to get better at. That's just, I was created and molded this way. I don't like murky. I don't like gray. I don't like not knowing. I think one of the reasons I ruined relationships when I was younger with women is because I definitively wanted to know where things stand. I didn't want to be lied to. And I could have let her lie to me and let the relationship gone on a little longer, and then it would have just ended the way it was going to end anyway, until I just point blank asked, and then it just ended right then. All right? I am just wired this way. I am fine with the truth, even if it's not what I would prefer to be true. That's actually how I got converted. One of the ways, other than the sovereign act of God, is I had to contemplate, is there another worldview that can adequately, sufficiently, it doesn't mean I'm highly favorable of the answers, but can it sufficiently answer the most important questions in life? Why are we here? Why is the world the way that it is? Why are we the way that we are? And what can be done about it? Those are the four most important questions in all of human existence. Why are we here? Why are we the way we are? Why is the world the way that it is? And what can be done about it? Those are the four most important questions of our existence, in my opinion. And the only worldview, the only one that answers those questions sufficiently. I didn't say favorably. I didn't say easily. I didn't say it was cozy. I didn't say it was warm fuzzy. But the only one that answers those four questions sufficiently with an argument that stands up to scrutiny on both ends is the biblical worldview. It's the only one. So that's why this is the easiest piece of armor for me to put on. I'm like, this is a sports fan. When I used to do message boards, I would drive message board sports fans on my own favorite teams' websites. I drive them nuts because I hate excuses. No. Why'd we do that?
And
why
you're
do we
still
suck?
doing that to this
I
very
still do
day.
that today, which is why you know how bad the officiating was on November 28th, 2016 in Columbus, Ohio. That still 4 years later, I won't let it go. And in all the years you've known me, is that like about the only game you've ever heard me where there's been a bad call where I thought that was a bad call, but is that about the only actual game you've heard me blame? Maybe the pass interference, the Lions got against the Cowboys in the Super Bowl a few years ago, or didn't get.
Oh, no, but that's a cosmic religious thing.
With the Lions, where they're just due.
Yes.
Yeah, they just due to get screwed, yes.
No.
The only game you've probably, in the 16 years you've known me, can think of, where I maintain the referees actually cost us the actual game, is probably that one.
I think that's true. And if you had more examples, it would be a dude code violation. You're allowed the one. You are.
But I am typically the guy that jumps on the message boards to crush everybody who wants to blame the refs. Okay? Because I'm more interested in what did you do that ceded control of the game to them in the first place? What mistakes did you make? What did you control? You know, most people are wired to be afraid of the things they cannot control. I am not. I am afraid of the things that I can. All right. I am worried about the things I can control and suck at. If I'm not good at something, I'll come to grips with that pretty easily, actually. You know? The breastplate of righteousness, a breastplate is a piece of armor that traditionally guarded the chest to protect the heart. Any kind of wound to the heart can be fatal. So it needed like its own piece of armor specifically for it. Now, the scriptures place a high emphasis on the heart. We are to guard our hearts, we're told in the scriptures. We're admonished that out of the heart, the mouth speaks in the scriptures. The prophet Jeremiah promises a day that God will, quote, replace your heart of stone and replace it with a heart of flesh. Meaning that obedience, God will put his spirit in you so the obedience will be so much easier for the believer. It'll be like an instinct now for us to behave and act in certain ways. Now, speaking of obedience, that's what a breastplate of righteousness signifies. When we live by faith, we live righteously because faith is what leads to righteousness, and righteousness is one of our most powerful weapons against the schemes of the devil. Is obedience. So that's what the breastplate of righteousness is for. The gospel of peace, anxiety, worry. Do we have any of that going on right now in America? Do you think? A little bit. Anxiety, worry, discontentment. Those are the enemy's playgrounds. Once we are overcome with these traits, we become much more temptable. We seek self-medications, escapes, obsessions with worldly distractions. That's idolatry. We go to those things to take that worry and anxiety away. This is why we as believers need to have faith that even when we don't see it or feel it at any given moment, God is still at work in our lives. At this stage of my life, I will tell you that this is the most difficult piece of armor for me to put on. And like a lot of middle-aged men, I struggle with discontentment. I mean, I will struggle with, did I miss my moment? Is our show never going to really take off? Are they ever going to make the Nefarious movie? And the answer is actually, yes, we are going to make it very soon. Okay. But I waited 4 years from the time we signed that contract to getting a green light on this last month. These are the kinds, and then what will happen is I will let those thoughts just percolate. And then consider doing and thinking really dumb, destructive things. And then either I will succumb to those dumb and destructive things, then realizing after doing so how dumb and destructive they are that I'll come to my senses, or shortly before succumbing to them, I'll come to my senses and realize, do you understand that everything that you were just complaining and whining about is completely and totally irrelevant in the grand scheme of things and doesn't really matter? I thought a week ago I was going to really struggle with not having March Madness. It's one of my favorite times of the year. We've taken vacation during that time, my whole career. It's my all-time favorite sporting event. I got to tell you, I have barely thought about it whatsoever in the last week because we have more pressing matters, and I've got talents and gifts that God put me on earth to apply to those matters, more so than my love of the NCAA tournament. That doesn't mean that all those years I took time off to watch the NCAA tournament were sinful. We all need rest and escape. God took a day off. God. The question is, do these things become obsessions? And do they get in the way of us fulfilling our duties and obligations to our Creator and to one another? Do they get in the way of loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving your neighbor as you love yourself? That is the question. And in the last week, I can tell you this is an area where I can see the fruit of spiritual maturity. Even a few years ago, this would have just wrecked me not having this to go to. I've barely thought about it in the last week. I've got more pressing things on my mind right now. It'd be great to have it, but it'd be great to have it so that I could take a break from them. In fact, at this point, I am more worried about being obsessed with the more pressing matters. Okay, I'm having a harder time breaking away from those things. The shield of faith. In Paul's day, Roman soldiers were known for wearing shields that were made of tough animal skin. And before going into battle, they would reinforce those shields by dipping them into the water to protect them from any fiery weapons that they might face. And the Word of God is life-giving water. Jesus is the Word of God incarnate. Thus, believers are to constantly carry the Word and the Word made flesh into battle with them as protection against enemy fire. When I tweeted out earlier today to pray for President Trump to get courage of conviction and wisdom from above, this is what I meant. He needs a shield of faith right now, because he's a man that is double-minded in all of his, unstable in all of his ways, and double-minded himself. But he is also surrounded by a lot of people who have worldview confirmation bias. Experts, yes. But where does the line between their expertise, the science end, and the worldview bias and their paranoia panic begin? And it's going to take a man of immense character and integrity, or at least a man that's been given that for a moment from above, to at one point stand up to this and say, I got to call Horsepucky on this. If it comes to that. You want to know what that looks like? What was the Winston Churchill movie a couple of years ago that was up for the Academy Award? Darkest Hour. Darkest Hour. Right. That's what it looks like. That's a guy who's basically a cretin. But for one moment in history, had a very checkered political past, gave him the prime minister job just because they set him up to fail so they have somebody to blame when they surrendered to Hitler. But for one moment, rose to the moment of history. Maybe that was Providence intervening right there. And his gut told him the experts are wrong. This is not a force we can negotiate with. And against all the experts, he dug in his heels. And he saved Western civilization, frankly. He did. If he had not done this, this thing was over long before we even got into the war. He saved it. We all owe a debt of gratitude to Winston Churchill. Donald Trump may need that level of conviction here in the days and weeks to come. The helmet of salvation is we are to work out our salvation with fear and trembling, meaning salvation is both instant in an eternal sense, but then proceeds from there with a process known as sanctification. And this requires renewing our mind, which is where transformation comes from, and begins to take root in the believer. We become different than we used to be. The things we desire change. The things we want to see change. And it helps us, the helmet helps protect our heads to guard our thoughts, just like the breastplate of righteousness protects the heart. And then there's the sword of the Spirit. And Paul explicitly tells us that this is the word of God. The sword was the most powerful individual weapon in Roman times. Some historic accounts say that Jews were not allowed to own swords because they kept having uprisings against the Roman people or the Roman government. And so when Jesus says to it, if that's true, when Jesus says, when he hands his disciples a sword, that's an act of civil disobedience, if that historicity is correct. Now, when the Romans wanted to keep a people subjected, they would forbid them from having swords. That is a historical fact. In the kingdom of God, though, every believer is given this sword and encouraged to wield it with impunity and maximum prejudice against the enemy. Wield the word of God with, don't shelve it. One of the dumbest things Christian leaders did in this last generation is tell Christians to get rid of the Bible and speak in common language. Don't ever go to war without your most devastating weapon. And there is one undefeated weapon in all of human history, and it is the word of God. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I am worried. We'll get to 3 non-political questions, though, because it's brought to you by our good friends over at Riduzone, who want to help you get back on the wagon when it comes to your New Year's resolution to lose weight and eat healthy. And they understand that this is a tough battle. It's a really, really difficult battle. I've waged it myself, so I know it firsthand. All right. And dieting alone can help, but can you maintain it after you get those results? That's what makes it hard. That's why a lot of people do fad diets, or they've been to Weight Watchers 7 times and it worked all 7 times. That puts a lot of strain on your body, though, that constant going up and down. How do you maintain a healthy lifestyle? Yes, you can work out, and you should, but there's broader health positives from working out than weight loss. And you can't out-train a bad diet anyway. And that's where Riduzone comes in. Because for most Americans, it's not what you're eating, but how much. How do you get those portion sizes under control? How do I get those late night cravings that then spoil the fact I was disciplined with my lifestyle all day long? How do you get those under control? Well, Riduzone may be your answer. It's the only FDA-accepted product that includes OEA. That's the naturally occurring molecule that helps you feel full faster, burns stored fat, while also reducing your calorie intake. If you want to try Riduzone, you can today for up to 65% off. That's a massive discount. Up to 65% off when you use the promo code STEVE on their website. That's the only place you can get Riduzone, is on its website. RIDUZONE for riduzone.com. RIDUZONE for riduzone.com. Let's get to 3 non-political questions.
We all have questions.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? A search and a question of identity. Why am I here? A question of meaning and purpose. Where am I going? Question of destiny.
Some better than others.
What sort of morality or proto-morality would you expect to find in a chimpanzee troop?
Injecting some levity into the demise of Western civilization. It's 3 questions on the Steve Deace Show.
Yes, 3 non-political questions, although honestly, you know, we haven't really been talking a whole lot about politics this week, have we? No, public policy, but the back and forth. A sign of normalcy is what's been happening on Twitter today about this OAN reporter. You know, we're back to just taking
What's this? I don't even know what this is. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. This reporter for OAN asked Trump if he thought Chinese food was a racist term. So So there's that. We're back to getting to the real important issues of life.
Isn't that the network that essentially strives to be Trump's network?
The reporter was being facetious.
So setting him up.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So 3 non-political questions. Question number 1.
So fighting dumb with dumb.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Because that's never not worked. If you had to transplant yourself into one of the following universes and you couldn't return, which would you choose? Narnia, Star Wars, Middle-earth, or Harry Potter?
That's a great question. That's one of the best questions you've ever asked.
Well, thank you.
Okay. So the Star Wars universe, Narnia. You know what? I'm going to go, or Narnia, or the other two were the Harry Potter universe,
Potter, Middle-earth.
Or Middle-earth. I think
we
already know your answer. I'm going to go with Narnia. And here's why. Because I can go back and forth.
You think you can?
Yeah.
It's random though.
Yeah, but
frustratingly so.
Frustratingly so. I know. I might be on the Dawn Treader one day, and then I might be back in that London wardrobe the next. I understand that. Okay, but I'll take my chances.
But that's the uncertainty you hate. I was really surprised. I thought you and me were gonna have the same answer.
I like value added. I like value added more than I dislike uncertainty. So if you're telling me I can get some of this universe and the fantastical universe of Narnia, I'll take my chances because that gives me 2 for 1, right? That's why when I had my first full-time job. So when I flunk out of college and I go live with my grandmother 25 years ago now, and I get my first full-time job, and I get my first paycheck from the Des Moines Register, which was chicken feed, and my first tax refund. You know what the first purchase I ever made was?
You've told me this before, and I'm just
a picture-in-picture, a 27-inch picture-in-picture TV.
Course.
Nice.
Now I could have afforded a bigger TV than 27 inches. All right, but it wasn't going to be picture-in-picture. And I made the decision, the ability to watch 2 games at once was more important than watching one game on an even bigger screen. If I'm always down for the value added, always. So I'm going to choose Narnia because I can get some of the old world with the mystical at the same time.
Is picture-in-picture still a thing?
You know where you do it now is like DirecTV lets you do it through like your console, but the way they just let you split your screen in half. If you get YouTube TV like Aaron does, they've got like that one channel with the 5 screens or something on it, right? Can't you do that?
Oh, that's news to me because I was just
going to say.
You didn't know
that? No, I'm pretty sure YouTube TV offers that. I've heard people talk about it.
Because I was just going to say.
Like the Phil Steele setup with all the screens, I think they offer that.
Oh, wow.
You didn't know, you went through a whole football season, you didn't know that?
Well, see, we had 2
now,
TVs.
Aaron really wants the coronavirus pandemic to end.
We had 2 TVs up until December when my old roommate moved out, so there was not really a huge need. I had no idea.
I thought that someone told me, because
I've been trying to figure out a solution.
I thought someone told me you could do that on YouTube TV. You could do that. Maybe I'm wrong. But what you do now with DirecTV is you don't do it through your TV. You do it through DirecTV, and you can watch 2 channels at once and just split your TV in half and flip the volume back and forth. So if there's a couple different games on you want to watch at the same time, you flip whenever those come back, you flip the volume back and forth to the game that you want to hear the sound from.
Cool.
Yep.
I'm Middle-earth. There's organization. I can see who is what. You have the lack of predictability was frustrating within the storyline of Narnia. Although I love the Narnia stories, and no one knows what Star Wars. I mean, I have no idea what the Star Wars universe even is anymore. I'm not playing Russian roulette on that level. I'd rather be sitting at the table in the Deer Hunter with the red bandana.
Todd is so broken.
Yes.
What he just told you is, I don't want lightsabers. I don't want
wands.
I don't want warp drive. I don't want any of that. I'd rather take my chances with the orcs.
Yeah. Totally.
That's what Todd just told you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what you were talking about, your old buddy, Mr. Miller, he has YouTube TV, and he opened up a different browser window for every screen.
Okay.
I think which is a clever solution.
That's actually very that's like the most impressive thing I've seen my friend John ever do, if that's how we made it happen. Just different browser windows to split his screen up into 5.
Yeah. Different incognito mode
we
browsers.
should put him in charge of the coronavirus effort coming up for that. That's awfully clever. Okay.
No kidding. Mine is Harry Potter. Faux shizzle.
That was an anticlimactic answer.
Yep.
Yeah.
This second question, I stole this from Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire.
I'm really concerned.
Yeah. If you had to be quarantined for a week with 3 historical figures, whom would you choose?
I would assume no Jesus jukes are allowed because he's bigger than a historical figure, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I would take St. Paul for sure. I just would like to go back and forth, man. Just teach me your ways.
Show me everything.
Yes. Well said. I'd go with that. Wow. I think I'd go ahead and put Churchill on the list. All right. I'd put Churchill on the list. I'd put St. Paul on the list. And I got to give American history, right? I got to go Team America here on one of these. Because I only get 3, right?
Only 3. Yeah.
Only 3. All right. So I went theology. I went broader Western civilization. There's other historical figures I could choose. I'm just from other eras. I'm just not sure if the cultural gap is so wide that, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's picking Charlemagne's brain?
Right.
That's a conversation out of time, you know? So let me give Americana, and I'm going to go with Thomas Jefferson. Because I am fascinated how somebody who had some of the most heterodoxical theological beliefs amongst our founding fathers actually had one of the most solid biblical hermeneutical approaches to politics among the founding fathers at the exact same time. That is a conversation I would love to have, is that. Can I add now, if you told me I could have an interpreter.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
All right. Then I would strongly consider Muhammad. If you told me I could have an interpreter. Because that's a dude I'd like to add. I've got a few questions for. Those are my answers.
I would say Lincoln.
I thought about him too.
So much has been written about that guy, and he still is, kind of this hard to really pin down, chiseled out of, even more so than Washington. I think somehow Lincoln is just endlessly fascinating. And who really was he? We still seem to not quite be sure. And then I'm going to stick strictly to America. The larger-than-life personalities that you'd really like to see, like Mark Twain, that dude, seems like he's a story instead of the storyteller. And I think it would be pretty cool to sit down with that guy. And then, how about, I think General Eisenhower, World War II D-Day planning General Eisenhower, wearing the weight of planning something like D-Day would be fascinating.
Yeah, that's good. I do Winston Churchill, the aforementioned Winston Churchill. Then I would do James Madison, and then before that, Leonardo da Vinci. Imagine having myself during this time of after a ton of digital development all the way back to Da Vinci with different people in different areas of expertise all the way through. That would be an interesting conversation, or an awkward one. Question number 3, left to your own devices with no responsibility for anyone other than yourself, what items would you hoard during a national crisis?
Left to my own devices.
Yes.
Which items would I hoard?
Yeah.
Are basic necessities available, like electricity, running water?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. What would I hoard? Meaning the three items I could least go without, right?
Mm-hmm.
Device chargers. I gotta stay connected to the outside world, so I would go with device chargers. Make sure I've got plenty of those. Anything like a men's soap, soap, hair. No, like, because we the things they put, like Dial does those things. And just guys can just clean themselves from head to toe, something like that. Okay, because I'm just big into. I can't. No, I got to have that. So I'd go with that to bathe myself. And so we have water, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then, wow, this is a hard question. I can't handle not being bathed. I can't do that. That's it. I can't. I just can't.
So what would happen?
If I'm camping, I can handle not being bathed.
That's why I don't camp.
Most of the other times.
Yeah, I can't do it. I can't.
Well, what does can't mean? If the national crisis could mean the water is shut off.
Well, this is why
Let's have a real national crisis.
That's why I asked him about what define crisis.
Turn off, Aaron,
if
turn
everything's,
off the, Aaron,
if everything's off,
an American crisis.
Okay, if everything's off, I'm taking water. You know, the basic necessities of life. If it's something like right now, and I would hoard chargers. Something to just even get in a shower head to toe and wash myself with, you know, and my favorite protein drink. I'd go with that.
What first world nonsense was just garbled?
I tried to come up with something that would serve multiple uses. Okay, I need to drink something else with a different flavor, and I need the protein. So I'm going to go with those three things.
Todd,
bullets, cans of beans, and a book I'd want to read over and over and over again.
That's really good,
dude. He just told. What is this? Where the buffalo roam?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
No, that's very
a can
well
of beans.
Can of beans. Yeah. I think for me, I would hoard all of the like pork shoulders and maybe brisket that I could,
I
and
love
just
brisket.
smoke it all on the smoker, the meat smoker. I don't smoke meat. I don't think it's a good idea to smoke meat. But anyway,
Okay,
I would
hold on.
smoke all of that meat.
Okay.
Hoard the brisket.
Yeah. Smoke all of the meat.
I've never been more glad Pete Buttigieg is no longer running for president than I was during whatever that hell that was you were just trying to say. Thank you. Because that was one stumbling vat of double entendres. What else?
That's it. I would just do all the meat and then go over to Todd's place. We'd crack open some cans of beans. He's got the protection from all the bullets in the gun, you know.
Aaron showing all the self-awareness of those Hollywood stars singing Imagine here for the last few minutes.
Yeah,
Indeed.
maybe he and I could read the book over an open fire or something.
Let's get out of here. I think we've put the audience through enough. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, right here on Blaze TV, radio and podcast. Until then, John 3:17.